A24 is synonymous with quality films, especially within the horror genre. So what are my top 5? Let's dive in on this episode of Pop Culture Picks. Hey everybody, I'm John Lunsford here with the Pop Culture Life, and I love A24. When that logo comes on the screen, I know I'm in for a quality movie. Whether it's a movie they simply put their stamp of approval on by distributing it, or if it's something they actually produced, they have done some of the best films of all time, in my opinion. Now, I can't say I've seen every single film they've distributed and produced. That's a very large undertaking. But I'd say my wife and I have probably seen a large portion of them. During COVID, we ended up going through a large chunk of the catalog of lesser-known titles. And of course, we've seen all their award-winning work and more. So I'll preface this video with this. My wife is an absolute horror fanatic. She loves the genre, has even written, directed, and produced multiple horror films of her own. I even have this Midsommar poster behind me here because of her. Does it make my list? We'll see. But my wife is the kind of person that has been watching Art the Clown, for instance, since he was in short films over a decade ago. So naturally, she has gotten me to watch way more horror than I ever wanted to, but I have discovered some quality gems within the genre, and not even just from A24. A24 has a big year coming up in 2025 on the horror and thriller side of things. We've already got a trailer for Death of a Unicorn, which is a horror comedy starring Jenna Ortega, who has quickly become a popular Scream queen with X from A24, Scream, playing Wednesday, Beetlejuice. We also have a trailer for Opus starring Ayo Edebiri, which looks like a good horror thriller film. And they just released the trailer for Bring Her Back, which is from the same directors as Talk to Me, which is considered by a lot of people to be considered one of the best A24 films. We're also getting a new Ari Aster film this year from A24, although it doesn't seem like it'll be a horror film. The film's title is Eddington. Seems like it's more of a black comedy film, but Ari Aster's entire filmography so far has been 3 A24 horror films. A24 also does a lot of movies that kind of bend genres and don't even just get classified into one style. I have some honorable mentions I'll get to at the end that you may consider more horror than I do. I really only included films on my list that are actually classified as horror on something like Wikipedia or IMDb, or that I definitively define as horror first. So as we head into the 2025 A24 slate, here are my top 5 A24 horror films that even a non-horror fan like me would enjoy. Number 5 on the list, we have High Life from 2018. This is one we found during COVID that I actually had no idea about before we found it on the list of Wikipedia movies, but we ended up actually really enjoying it. It's a sci-fi horror film. It stars Robert Pattinson, Mia Goth, Andre 3000, and Juliette Binoche as a group of criminals who are sent on a space mission to a black hole far off while taking part in some weird scientific experiments. Weird is an understatement in this movie. The experiments are basically artificial insemination, and they're trying to create children in space, and basically everyone goes crazy because, well, they're criminals and they're sent to the void of space. It's a very hard movie to explain. It's definitely a horror film, but a lot of sci-fi elements in there as well. I'd say just go watch the trailer and see for yourself. It may not be for you, but I actually really enjoyed it. Number 4 on the list is It Comes at Night from 2017. Trey Edward Schultz is getting ready to release a new thriller with what looks like some horror elements in it with Hurry Up Tomorrow, the companion film to the new album of the same name from The Weeknd. It Comes at Night was his follow-up to Krisha, which isn't really a horror movie, but still a very uncomfortable movie to watch. It Comes at Night stars Joel Edgerton as a husband and father who is trying to keep his family safe after a contagious disease has wrecked the planet. Kind of, I guess, like a COVID situation, but more intense and made before COVID. Christopher Abbott, who we just saw in The Wolfman, plays another dad who breaks into their house and is trying to scavenge to protect his family, and it becomes a contentious film between the two families as they both try to stay safe from not only the disease, but from each other as well. It's got a great cast. It's very well made. Number 3 on the list is Midsommar. This is Ari Aster's best work, if you ask me. Florence Pugh is incredible in it and had an amazing year in 2019 as a breakout star. She did Fighting with My Family, where she played the wrestler Paige, then Midsommar, and then Little Women, which she was actually nominated for an Oscar for. Midsommar tells the story of Danny and Christian, an American couple who end up getting mixed up in a violent cult in Sweden after they go with their friends Josh and Mark because Josh is writing his thesis on European midsummer festivities. It also stars Jack Rayner, Will Poulter, and William Jackson Harper. And it's a very stylized movie, and the scenery and cinematography are incredible in this. It definitely has some incredibly violent moments that aren't for the squeamish, but the direction is great, and it may be Florence Pugh's single best role. Number 2 on the list, a movie from this past year in I Saw the TV Glow. This film wasn't seen by a lot of people, but it is one that I highly recommend. It's a film that has stayed with me long after seeing it in the theaters this past summer. It stars Justice Smith as Owen and Jack Haven as Maddie, two troubled high school students in the 90s who are obsessed with kind of a Nickelodeon-style TV show called The Pink Opaque. It kind of draws parallels from shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or The Adventures of Pete and Pete. Kind of Are You Afraid of the Dark? I don't want to get into too many spoilers with it because I do recommend you go watch it. It's on Max right now, but it's a psychological horror drama that is very artistic in how it's done and touches on a ton of themes as the main characters start kind of questioning everything about not only their reality, but also their identities and who they truly are. Number 1 on the list is The Lighthouse from 2019. Robert Eggers is no stranger to horror films before Nosferatu this past year, which was really well done, but was not from A24. His first 2 films, though, were A24 horror films with The Witch and The Lighthouse. I'm not as high on The Witch as other people. I feel like it's very well liked by most, and it was our first introduction to Anya Taylor-Joy before she did Split the next year, but it just didn't really do it for me as much as it did for my wife and others. If I had $1 for every time my wife yells, "Black Phillip," every time she sees a goat, I'd be rich. However, I thought The Lighthouse was an incredibly well-made film with 2 amazing leads who had to carry the entire production. It's a black and white film starring Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe as 19th century lighthouse keepers who have to stay at their posts after a wild storm prevents the ship from coming to pick them up. And then it kind of follows their descent into madness while being marooned at the lighthouse. It was shot incredibly well. It was nominated for Best Cinematography at the Oscars. A lot of critics have kind of pointed out that this film doesn't really fall into one genre or another. It's kind of a lot of different elements. But I do think there are a lot of horror elements here, and at its core, it's kind of a psychological horror film. Robert Eggers just says it's a weird tale, and that's it, while Robert Pattinson 100% thinks it's a comedy. I don't know if I go quite that far, but I do think if you like Nosferatu, then it's worth watching both The Witch and The Lighthouse because you can see a lot of similarities. The Witch in more of that old-timey style, and The Lighthouse when it comes to the cinematography and the way Nosferatu is shot. Some honorable mentions. I don't consider Ex Machina a horror film. I think there are some tense and somewhat creepy elements to it, definitely some horror there, but it's definitely more of a straight-up sci-fi film to me. If I did include it, it would 100% be number 1 since it is one of my favorite films of all time. Another movie I really like that you think would be a horror movie, but it's not, is A Ghost Story. I very much enjoyed that. It's definitely more of just a drama. You think a movie called A Ghost Story would be a horror movie, but it's not. I also don't really consider Enemy a horror film. It's one of Denis Villeneuve's early films that came out in 2013 alongside Prisoners. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal in kind of a dual role, and it's a psychological thriller, but I don't think it really goes into horror territory. But if I did include it, it probably would be around number 3. And then another one that seems like a horror movie, but once again, I consider it more of just a sci-fi movie, is Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson. It's a very weird, artsy movie. It definitely has horror elements to it, but I definitely classify it as just a sci-fi movie and not horror. So what are your favorite A24 horror films, and what should a non-horror fan like me still watch because it's just that good? Let me know in the comments, and make sure to like this video and subscribe for more pop culture content.